Hello everybody, and lovely to see lots of you here on this Tuesday afternoon. It might well be holiday for you yet, or it might be looming on Thursday. If it is, I'm sure you're on the countdown, and thank you for your time this afternoon. As Louise said, was any questions, put them in the chat as you think of them, rather than waiting until the end. Hopefully have a chance to answer end of the session, or obviously within the session as well. It might come up as well. So this is on effective assessment and interventions in primary mathematics. And my name is Rachel Wood, and I'm the Key Stage 2 Maths Advisor and Trainer here at Twinkl. And all of the links that I talk about this afternoon will be on that document that's being popped into the chat. So feel free to open them as I talk. So it's a session to look everything all together. Feel free to look at that as I'm speaking. So let's get started. So welcome. It might be your first TeachMeet with me, or it might be a second or third one. Sorry for that. Welcome. I'm the Key Stage 2 Maths Advisor and Trainer here at Twinkl. And prior to working here, I was the Key Stage 2 teacher for 18 years. They were in 2 different junior schools in Southend-on-Sea and Essex, and I was maths lead for the majority of my career. So you can imagine over the years, lots of changes in curriculums, in guidance, expectation, and how things are taught. And how the classrooms are organised. When I look in Twinkl, I've also got 2 little boys. They're 3 and 5. They keep my on my toes, as you can imagine. They also love maths, which I'm very pleased about. And very cliche comment now, but I really am passionate about maths, and I love the subject. And I really, really do believe that everybody can succeed with the right support and the right teaching. I think having that love of maths and that culture of maths and creating it as a subject that everybody can really immerse themselves in, I think is so important. So thank you for your time this afternoon, and hopefully something you're going to get from the session is that I love maths, and hopefully everyone can love maths together. So our session aims, we have a little introduction. Obviously it's on assessment, so that why we have assessment, why we need to assess, and so different types of assessment. And also look at interventions as well. Almost it comes as a result of assessment. So what assessment is and how our interventions are there as a result. We'll look at resources that we've got here at Twinkl that you might want to have a look at. They'll be on that document as you were told and shared during the session as well. But once again, any questions that you have, please pop them in the chat, and they'll be stored for the end of the session as well. Okay, so let's get started. So little warm up for a Tuesday afternoon. Feel free to put any suggestions in the chat as well. It was interesting to see what people think. Why do you assess in your role as an educator? How do you do it? And what's the impact? So have a little think to yourself. Any comments popped in on the chat of why you assess, how you do it, and what's the impact? All right, let's have a little look then. This is a very, very short, I love it, AFL, thank you, is lovely. AFL, I'm going to talk about that this afternoon as well. Continuing understanding, new learning, fantastic. So the really, really, really short clip I'm going to show you now. It's an extract from an old teacher's TV video from back in the day. It's a really short clip. And I think it almost sums up exactly what it's going to be this afternoon. So it's very, very short. I'll mute myself. Link and you miss it, but listen carefully.
There is no point at all in carrying out assessments unless you're going to use them to inform the next steps in children's learning.
Told you it was short. Say it once more time.
There is no point at all in carrying out assessments unless you're going to use them to inform the next steps in children's learning.
And to me, that's what assessment is. There's no point doing it as you're going to inform your learning, inform the next steps of the children's learning and your planning. I always think back to many, many years ago, we all had to mark these test papers. Children had to sit these test papers, so lesson time taken out to sit and do a test in silence. They did the test, we spent hours marking it, and they sat in the cupboard. They sat there. That was it. The children said to me, how should I get on with the test? I weren't allowed to share the results. Parents, it was nothing. It was just filling it in a table basically, and then put it on a server at the school. That was it. There was no point to it. taken time out of actually teaching the children to do the assessment, and there was no purpose to it. So any assessment you're going to do, whether or not it's a small assessment, biggest, whatever it might be, has to have a purpose. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. And that's the key thing I want to get across this afternoon. Think, who's it for? Hopefully it's for you as a teacher to inform next steps of your planning, for the children to reflect on how they've done, obviously for parents, and also for the school as well as a whole. But it's what is it for, and we're going to do with it. Okay. This is taken from the most latest Ofsted review for maths. The document is there, the link for you. Want to read the whole thing. It actually is really quite interesting. Obviously, it goes to Key Stage 3 as well. This is their view and assessment. Assessment is most useful when it focuses on the component knowledge that pupils have learned. This aids people's confidence, makes it easier to analyse and respond to gaps in learning. I really like that quote because the word confident is in there. We want children to be confident in maths. We want children to feel, yes, they can do it, they've learned something and they can do it and they can do more. Assessment shows what the children have learned. If you're just doing a general test, have they been taught all that yet? Focus on the component knowledge pupils have learned. So you've taught them something and then assess what they have been taught. What have they learned? Then you can analyse and look at the gaps, and the interventions that come there in a result are based on that evidence. But we want children to be confident in maths, we want children to want to do their maths. So assessment can be a real important tool for that, not creating a fear, but creating children with their confidence. And that's their view going into lessons, what they've seen. The Education Endowment Foundation, EEF, is their view on assessment as well. It's quite obviously a long quote. Mathematical knowledge and understanding can be thought of as consisting of several components, a bit like what Ofsted said. It's quite possible for people to have strengths in one component, weaknesses in another. We've all got as children in our head thinking about a fantastic at number, but they can't tell the time, or they're fantastic at geometry and shape manipulation, but they really struggle with their fractions, for example. So it's focusing on what they can and they cannot do. It's therefore important that assessment is not you just to track pupils where they are. Back in the days of levels, they made their level step, whatever it might be, progress, but it's up-to-date information for teachers, so they can see what pupils do and do not know. This information allows teachers to adapt their teaching, so it builds on existing knowledge, addresses their weaknesses, and focuses on the next steps they need in order to make progress. It's where are they? What have they got to work on? What is the area for development, rather than weakness, in my view? And how are we going to use our planning in order to fill that gap and to move those children on, rather than just doing generic assessment of everything, they haven't been taught it yet, then actually, why is the assessment taking place? As it's a baseline, of course, that's a little bit different. So it's where they are, what they've been taught, and finding out what they can and cannot do. So why do we do it? Allows us to evaluate the learning that's taken place. So what learning has taken place within that class setting, and evaluate it. What have they got understood? What do we need to work on as a class, or individuals, or a group? Go and understand our learners. You are, as teachers, amazing in knowing all those children, what they can and can't do. Assessment allows us to have that really wonderful conversation with the children or their parents about where they're at, what they need to work on, how we can support them. Highlight the strengths and the areas for development of our learners and our next steps in our teaching. Now, you may be following a scheme of work for your school, or your trust might adopt a scheme, but obviously as a teacher, you're still going to make personalised steps to go and change it, adapt it for your particular class. So think about the scheme you're following, and you're going to change it, making sure those children are getting the teaching education that they actually need in order to make progress. Enhance our teaching, but become better at our teaching. So effectively got our scheme of work, whatever it might be, or our objective we're following, and where are the children at, and how can we enhance that? How can we move that forward and fill all the little gaps that children have in their learning? Words formative and summative are probably in our mind when we say assessment. And we look at the differences between the two this afternoon. This little analogy I like just to start us off. When the cook tastes the soup, that's formative assessment. And when the customer tastes the soup, that's summative assessment. So imagine in the kitchen, the cook's trying it out, have a little bit of this, try that. What do we think? Let's just practice that again. Look at this. Oh, what do we think? When it's in front of the customer, that's the finished result. So then our classroom, our formative, is what's happening every single day, what you're doing all the time. And then that summative assessment is almost like, right, what have we learned? Where are our learners at this point? Little recap video I've got now for you, just to have a little look, comparing the two, formative and summative. Okay, so just a little summary here. And it's taken from thirdspacelearning.com. There's a website there. I want to have a little bit more detail. So formative is about improving learning, improving the learning that's taking place in the classroom. Whereas summative is gaining more of a measure of attainment, or the end result, if you like. Now, that's not at the end of the year. That could be end of a week, end of a area of a unit, could be of a term, it could be of a lesson. What have we learned? What's the measure of attainment? Formative is happening all the time. You do it without reasoning, without thinking. It's the questions, it's the exit passes, it's the whiteboards, it's the conversations, the collaboration and listening in, all the time getting a picture of what your class can do. Whereas summative is that less frequent. And also at the very beginning, I said those tests they were set in the cupboard. If you're doing a summative assessment, do something with it, whether it's not to show the children how they've done, or to measure their attainment, where they're at to improve their next steps of your teaching, do something with it. Formative is at low stakes. Children are doing all the time. It's their work within the class, what happens all the time, what's familiar with them. They're used to doing exit passes, they're used to doing lollipop sticks, whatever it might be you're doing, they're used to it. High stakes assessment for summative assessment, that's a little bit more, they feel it's a bit more sort of serious, if you like. It might be the more formal test paper in front, or the more formal set of working. Formative is teachers providing feedback to improve their learning. We'll talk about feedback a little bit later as well. Whereas summative is that more final grade that score. If you're in year 6, obviously you've got the SATs looming very soon. It's that more finalised where we're at. So formative happening all the time, summative less. Interesting about low stakes assessment and high stakes assessment. I'm going to talk a bit about that and how they both can be used. So summative. This once again is from the Ofsted document. Ofsted say summative assessment of learning needs to provide an easily comparable information to all stakeholders. So obviously that's parents, the pupils themselves as well. Whether it's parents' evening or sharing the information, and it needs to be easily comparable. So your school might buy into a scheme of assessments that they do each term, and they can easily compare. If you're comparing very different things, then it's very hard to see that measure of actually of attainment. The modular exams, they're a short-term goal. So a sense of achievement, going back to the idea of their confidence, they had their very first quote I had from this document. But it could just be a just in time. Just in time, as they've just got it at this point, is it a real deep understanding? Whereas an end of course examination or a slightly longer time between, that shows that greater assurance that learning is long term. And we've all had those moments where they've got it. Yes, they've got time. They can do it. They've got it. Come back a few weeks later, and it's gone again. So it's making sure that when you're doing an assessment and making a judgment with your assessment, that it is based on long-term learning, that it's deep understanding. So coming back over things and keeping things fresh and repeating things is really important to show that children's confidence as well. Yes, they really can do it, and you've got a secure understanding that yes, those pupils are where you say they are, and it's deep learning, not just a just in time. Could be forgotten soon after. So repeating things. So the age-old question, is testing a good thing? We can discuss this, I'm sure, for hours. Do we need tests? What do tests make children feel? All this. Unfortunately, they're here to stay. Ofsted also say that frequent low-stakes testing helps pupils prepare for final performance. If you remember, low stakes was on the formative assessment side of the column, and that can really help the final performance. So if you're doing low-stakes assessment frequently, then I'm becoming familiar with it. And I mean, you could use test style questions in that format. So rather than just saving the tests for the summative, actually cutting up test papers or putting questions up on the screen, just referring to particular ones, children then are familiar with that. So the more they do the low stakes assessment in improving our learning, the more they're prepared. And if children are prepared for something, yes, they're supposed to be apprehensive, and some children always will be, but they feel they've prepared for that moment. And this once again is from the same document. They say when pupils attain a level of proficiency, they look forward to and enjoy tests. I'm not sure every child does, but some spring to mind. I used to love it. What's a chance to show off what they've learned? Chance to almost say, yes, I have done this. I can do it. They've also found that competitive games are more effective. Whether that's an online game, a game in the class, whatever it might be, and some element of competition allows more for a retention than non-competitive games. It's something they're going to get back, whether it's earning points, whatever it might be. They like to achieve personal best. Children do. They like to do of year 4, preparing for the MTC coming up, trying to beat what they got, trying to do things faster. Idea of having some element of competition against themselves. They want to get better. They want to get better. Creates that environment of yes, I can do it. So in addition to ensuring pupils are well prepared for tests, lessons should ensure benchmarks for success are understandable. So they need to know what they need to do. They need to know what's expected. They need to know that benchmark that they're aiming for. I have been transparent, really, talking with the children of where they should be, what they're aiming for, what's their target, and so on. Involving them in the process rather than having the test paper sitting in the cupboard, not doing anything, making it all run it together. Then they're a positive experience. So it's all idea of becoming prepared for the final performance. If you're doing your practice driving test, for example, you want some feedback from them before the final thing. The same thing, low stakes assessment, giving children an opportunity to practice before the formal finished assessment, whatever it might be, the SATs, end of term, end of week, whatever you might be doing. So these are what we've got here at Twinkl. They're all on the document. You can have a look at. We've got a variety of different types of assessment that you could use as a formal summative assessment. There's a termly one for a number replaced value, for example, or you might want to put them in pairs, let them talk about it, work together. You might want to cut questions up, put them up on the screen, or put them around the classroom. You might want to make like a treasure hunt. Anything we're making it from a low stakes style, but they're looking at those assessment questions still. So they're being prepared for what they look like with the mark scheme and how the wording might be, but doing it in a different way. Or you could do it as a formal termly assessment and track how they're doing. So you can do this in a variety of ways, and mixing things up, I think, makes it much more effective. This is the termly one. Got a number and place value end of strand. Once again, you can see how it's laid out. They can dip into it. They could do it as a formal assessment. They could do it in pairs, and they could share their answers and work together and really discuss it. It could be a whole class feel. Adapting your teaching to meet the needs of your class. If you've got a class that get really apprehensive in test, like this, allows them to become familiar. We've also got baselines, so it's useful to know where they're at already before they start the session, before they start the unit. You can use that. I've got ready to progress assessments as well. So you can see how variety of different things we've got here, and for all different year groups. So feel free to click and look and share to help our children get to that end point without getting terrified, getting nervous. So some children still will, we know that, but preparing them as much as possible, as Ofsted said, for the final performance with frequent low stakes testing, they've recognised that's a positive thing, and that's what they've seen when they've gone into classrooms as a positive. We've also got these here. It's a really great way of keeping things going, keeping things fresh for each year group, Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. It's day 2, for example, up on the screen, just to really keep those skills practiced. We want fluency. We want children to be familiar. We want children to be confident and be able to use and make connections, all the different areas of maths. Not just think, right, I'll just do maths then. And some schools are doing maths different times of the day. They're doing first in the morning or after lunch to keep maths going, keep maths fresh, keep maths children confident before their final performance in whatever assessment they might be doing. And we've also got, if you're in year 6, I'm sure you've got so many different things going. We've also got year 6 sat survival you can have a look at. Got some practice papers there, the full thing if you want to do it like that as well. So dip into, there's so much information for parents too, lots there. Okay, so that's summative. But obviously I said you can use it in a formative way as well. But formative assessment as a whole is what you're doing day-to-day teaching. It's aimed to develop children's knowledge and their understanding. And you may have used summative assessment style questions in that way, or you may have done a full formal assessment. So however you're dipping into it. Formative allows teachers to progress through teaching is without interruption, i.e. it should be each step flows from one to the other because you've built on that previous knowledge, that prior knowledge. Children are secure where they're at before they move on. Teachers can adapt their planning to meet the needs of the class to ensure all children make progress. As I said before, if you're following a scheme, you're still going to adapt it to meet your class because no class is the same. You might have a 4th elementary school, for example, and a class is completely different. Like we're following the same scheme of work, but you're going to adapt it based on your teaching. They haven't got a lesson, for example, so no point trying moving on to the next one. They've got to go over that. Some children, they like fly through something. Wow, they've got it already. Brilliant. Don't hold them back. They're adapting so they all make progress. We don't want the children rushing off the old top group in quotation marks. I absolutely hate that analogy. And the ones who are being pulled along, we're all together working through, using our skills, helping each other to all make progress. And this is obviously the flow chart. Where the learner is now, where they're going to go, and how they're going to get there. And that is formative assessment. So in your class, where are those children? Where do you want to get them? And how you're going to get there? Whether that's not with manipulatives, whether that's with support, whether that's going, over things more than once, so that's an intervention, which we'll still come to at the end, and how you're going to get there. Easier said than done, I know. Now, feedback, this is from the EEF again, their document looking at feedback, because obviously feedback is what children need in order to make progress as well. It's a crucial element, because obviously it's what you found about their learning and how you're feeding it back to them, so they can address their steps in their learning, and then they know what they need to do next. Be specific, be accurate, be clear. So what is it that they have done well, and what do they need to work on? So well done, you've really worked hard at your at time, for example, today. You can tell me your o'clock, you can tell me your half past, your quarter past. Be really, really clear. Give it sparingly. This means I was guilty of saying, well done, great, fantastic, all the time. People actually said to me, it's lovely to hear that, but is it actually, is it meaningful? Make it sparing so they know when they're having feedback that it's clear, it's accurate, you're speaking to them directly on what they need to do. Compare what they've done right now, what they've done wrong before. So you may say to somebody, you used to find equivalent fractions really challenging, didn't you? But now look, you've showed me what equivalent for a half is, show me equivalent for a fifth and a tenth. Well done. So they can see what they've done. Or might be, you couldn't show me your 7 times table before. You found that challenging, didn't you? And now look, you've showed me this here. So they can see, yes, that's why I found a challenge before, and now what I can do now. I've got better. I've made progress. So they feel it in themselves. They, rather than saying, well done, that's great, lovely to hear, doesn't mean anything. And also share that some things are challenging. They require extra attention. So we're going to have to work hard on this, and almost being open about it. Have that dialogue between you and your class, so they know what's happening. They know, yes, this is a challenge. This is difficult for us. We're going to work hard on this. If there's extra attention, we might need more time on this. Provide guidance on how to respond to your comments. Now, this obviously, I used to spend a lot of time marking. I'm sure we all do. And you've got to think, actually, once again, who are we marking for? Can it be oral? Obviously, schools have their assessment policies. Obviously, you must follow what that says. But if you're writing a comment after their work, give them time to respond to it. You might have sent them a challenge question, for example, or you might have asked them to look at a particular question. Give them time to do that. Otherwise, this is a waste of your time as a teacher doing it, and the children just go, oh, move on. But as always, who is the marking for? Hopefully it's for the children to improve their learning, and for you as a teacher to see where they were at and see where they need to be and the progress that they've made. Another little video I've got for you now on feedback. So I'll mute myself again. It's a little bit Americanized, but I'll do this.
Feedback is a powerful way to achieve improvement in teaching and learning. It is an integral part of every teacher's practice and, when used effectively, can improve student learning by as much as 8 months. As teachers and school leaders, it's essential to understand what evidence-based feedback is if we're to unlock the greatest possible benefits for our students. So, what does the research tell us about feedback in teaching? Feedback is an ongoing process of goal setting, gathering evidence about student learning, and providing instruction that makes clear the next actions to improve performance. Feedback can be given by the teacher, peers, or the student themselves. 2 evidence-based models for feedback have been developed by Hattie and Timperley and Black and William. Both models propose 3 important questions for both the student and teacher to consider. Where is the learner going? Students and teachers need to be clear about the learning goals and what success looks like. Goals need to be appropriately challenging so the students can succeed and grow. Where is the learner right now? Evidence is gathered about the student's knowledge, skills and performance relative to the learning goals and tasks. How does the learner get there? This involves clarifying the steps the student needs to take to achieve the learning goals. If needed, the teacher adapts or changes the teaching and learning activities to meet the student's needs. Feedback can be directly related to the learning task, which is useful. However, feedback about the processes underlying the task or about how students self-regulate their learning is more powerful. So, what are the benefits of effective feedback? Research indicates that effective feedback can increase student effort and outcomes, lead to more effective learning strategies, and improve student self-regulation. The benefits for teachers are also significant. Effective feedback practices provide evidence about student learning related to learning goals and the curriculum. This helps teachers understand the impact of their teaching and, if needed, where to adapt strategies to better meet the needs of their students. To improve and sustain good feedback practices, it is vital that educators work collaboratively. School leaders can support teachers by prioritising feedback and implementing a whole school approach, providing access to resources and opportunities for professional learning and collaboration. Teachers can develop their feedback practices by communicating clear learning goals, trialling activities that provide evidence of student learning, planning for task, process and self-regulated feedback, checking that students understand and act on the feedback provided, and working with colleagues to develop and refine feedback practices. Feedback is evidence-based and inexpensive to implement. It offers a powerful approach to enriching teacher practice and significantly enhancing student growth.
So with that there, you can see how, there's one line there, effective feedback can improve learning by 8 months. Having that time with your children in your class to actually talk about their work and feedback what they've done is so crucial. I know we've got huge classes and we've got really busy timetables, but actually having that opportunity to sit with the group of children or an individual child or even the whole class, actually share and reflect on what they've done is so powerful. Marking books, yes, we know we need to mark books, but actually having that chance to sit with them and talk about their work and ask them, so it's that two-way dialogue, can improve children's performance. Because that's that confidence, again, that officer picked up at the very, very beginning. Confidence in subject because they understand where they're at. So I mentioned AFL at the very start, so we can't talk about assessment, that's also AFL. Assessment for learning, and this obviously is what we're doing all the time. Listening. NC terms, we're talking about mathematical talk and encourage mathematical talk, and this comes to it. Actually asking questions, getting down at the table with them and listening to their conversations. If they're doing collaboration, if they do one's assessment questions, for example, in pairs, having a chance to walk around the class and listen to their talk and listen to what they're doing is so crucial to see what they understand. Maths not all about grades. Ask them to look at their work and say, you've made 3 mistakes. Can you find them? So rather than just tick, 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 tick and cross and actually looking and saying, oh, I can see there's 3 errors there. Can you spot them on that piece of work? Then it's much more of an active process. It's not passive. It's not them open their books looking, oh, I've got 7 out of 10. Okay, move on. It's actually, we're all together. Discuss their answers with others. Work as a team. Can you spot the mistake there? Where is it? That's, oh, done it together. That's interesting. Your different methods there. Oh, which is the most efficient one, do you think? And having that idea of it's active, it's all in it together. Questioning, open-ended questions. They challenge learners. They encourage them to explain. It's, you know, it's what we do. Asking those questions, really deep thinking questions that children have got to rethink what their answer rather than just those closed questions. And then they work together. They're used to questions with each other as well. Social emotional development is so important. And working as a team, working them together, because there's some children who are brilliant at maths, but they can't work as a pair because of their idea, and that's all they're thinking of. They're not open to other suggestions. And if you're like that, they're not going to be able to think of different ways to solve a problem. So we all need each other. There might be somebody who's quite apprehensive about math. They've got some brilliant ideas, and working together and the questions, and somebody else who's thinking, oh, I know the answer all the time, actually listen to somebody else's suggestion is so important for their social emotional development as well. Questions have got open-ended, find all possibilities. They're encouraging these different methods. Then you as a teacher can get round the class and see what they're doing. They've got their whiteboards, for example. You can see what's there. You can photograph different things up on the screen and look at, you did this, you did that. What's the most efficient way of doing it? Is there more than one way of doing it? Can you only do it in one way? Can you solve it in 5 different ways? And having opportunities to talk as a class and share those ideas is so important to help everybody. Questioning, I did a whole TeachMeet on questioning a few months ago. The link is on the reflection document if you want to watch that one as well, so you're more than welcome, because questioning is huge, and effective questioning enhances our teaching. Effective questioning is so crucial for getting to know what learners can do and challenging them as well. So there's a whole TeachMeet there if you'd like to watch it. This is one slide I've taken from that TeachMeet to share with you this afternoon. There's some questions. These questions ask children to explain what they're doing or how they arrived at a solution. We've all had those children, we say, oh, how did you do it? I did it in my head, or I just did it, or I just know the answer. We want children to explain the methodology using that mathematical talk, because then if they have made a mistake, if they've explained what they've done, you can find out what the mistake was. Was it there's a calculation error? There's a little slip, or was it there's a deeper methodological misunderstanding there? So as they're working, questions like this that you might want to ask. What have you discovered about this? How did you find that? Why do you think so? Why do you think that's the answer? Why? Why did you get that answer there? What made you decide to do it that way? That particular question I really like. Think about our greater depth learners who might just do it. Asking them why they've done it in a particular way. And then you've got a group of children together done it in a different way. Then they've got learning from each other. Sitting in silence doing a test, yes, that has got a part in our assessment, of course it does. But those questions there, when you've got 5 children together, for example, they've got 5 minds there, 5 different ideas, they're going to get more understanding. And these are always useful. This is on the TeachMeet before, questioning ideas. Can you find odd one out, the pattern, what comes next, true or false? Just different ways of structuring questions. And what we've created here at Twinkl are our mastery lanyards, which you can have as teacher around your neck. You're lucky enough to have a TA in the classroom, or even the children as well. Just giving them those different question styles, encouraging that deep learning. So then you've got a great way of assessing those children. What's the odd one out? Why? Convince me that's the answer. Prove it. What's missing? What comes next? The links on the document, obviously, if you want to print those off, you're more welcome to. Right, we're nearly there. Interventions. So obviously you've done all your assessments, formative, summative, you've done test style practice, you've done questioning, you've done exit passes, you've done also AFL, you've done so much. Interventions are obviously part of our teaching world as well. This is a really interesting quote that the EEF said. They say, schools should focus on improvements to core classroom teaching that support all children in the class. We know that it might be adapting a new scheme, or always working on improving our classroom teaching. With this in place, the need for catch-up intervention should decrease. So we should have less interventions needed. In the real world, however, even they say, nevertheless, some high-quality structured intervention may still be required for some pupils to make progress. So it's that high-quality structure. Selection of the intervention should be guided by effective assessment of pupils' individual strengths and weaknesses. So in an ideal world, we wouldn't have intervention because they'd all get it and everyone get it, wonderful. But we're all aware that some children will find certain areas a challenge. And we're not talking about maths as a whole, we're talking about the structured intervention of a particular area. So your assessment has been focused on that particular component knowledge, the intervention as a result of that assessment. So what are they? They are short term. They're focused with specific intended outcome. What do we want these children to be able to do? What these children need to get better at? It's individuals or small groups with a particular need. We're not saying, right, these children need to go out with the TA every afternoon to get better at their maths. These children need to improve their adding. It needs to be specific based on your assessment. It's a focused teaching session. It's a deviation away from existing teaching practice and whole class teaching. So it's not swapping your whole class teaching for an intervention. It should be on top of, as a result of your teaching. It's not every maths lesson, these children go and sit with Mrs. Smith in the work area for maths. That's what an intervention is. That might be support within their lesson, having support with the extra adult, wonderful, if you're lucky enough to have extra adult in your classroom. That's not an intervention. And EEF, these 8 tips for planning, start early. And it obviously goes without saying, the earlier you can fill that gap, the better, because you don't want negative attitudes start impacting that subject. So you see the lesson, those children are really struggling with shape. They're the ones, focus those children and get it sorted as quick as possible. Be evidence-based. It's not just, oh, these children struggle with maths, or do an intervention for them. What is it they're struggling with? And it might also be intervention for children who want to be greater depth. It doesn't always, it's children who find something a challenge, push those more able children on as well for greater depth learning. Involve explicit and systematic teaching. So it needs to be verbalized, you need to have guided practice, proficient problem solving, and actually focus on what it is they need to do. A lot of talk, a lot of mathematical talk, explanation, a lot of problem solving. Be carefully planned. Now, this obviously is difficult in a very busy school, I know, but think about the resources and the staff and where you're going to do it. Are they doing intervention in the back of the hall with PE going on at the same time? That's not going to be effective. It needs to be planned, and this needs to be a whole school approach as well. If those children need interventions, then it needs to be planned for. SLT need to be involved, who the staff are going to be, where's it going to take place, have we got the resources for it? Otherwise, it's not worth it. Connection between the intervention and the whole class instruction. It's not a bolt-on. It should be the children can clearly see, this morning we did this, or yesterday we did this, we found it challenging, we're doing our intervention. It needs to be a link between it, not just a bolt-on separate from the class, just doing it for the sake of it, ticking a box. That's not going to help those children. It needs to motivate them. If these children are going out for extra maths, it needs to be positive. Make it fun, have some games. Make it, think at the beginning, the competitive element. Have a game, have a prize, have a reward, something they're going to get out of it that's seen as a positive for going out of the class for their intervention. And as a result of that, it's the timing. If they're going to miss art to do a maths intervention, you're on a losing streak before you even start. For some children who love art, or if they love PE. So think about what it is they're missing for this intervention. If you're missing English for maths intervention, that's also not a good time either. And then avoid intervention fatigue. If it goes on for too long, it's not going to be effective, because everybody starts to get a bit, oh, not again. But a quick, short intervention where they can clearly see progress they've made, the confidence they've built in it, right, brilliant, that's really effective. We have here at Twinkl same-day interventions that have been written based on our lessons, and it's same day. It's doing it at the time before that gap gets bigger, before it becomes more. It's really coming to grow now. Filling that gap early. We've got the EYFS or to year 6. There's the links to the document to have a little look at. It's just an example of a year 6 one here. Because we've got some fantastic TAs in our school, but if you put them on the spot and say do an intervention now without any equipment and resources, it's a bit unfair really. So these are here, the questions are there all set out, they're all designed, lots of fun activities to hopefully address that gap, build the children's confidence so they know, yes, they can do it. This is them, say year 6 one on rounding. It's all written out, all there, ready for the TA or whoever's delivering the intervention. It could be you as a teacher, sorry, all there for you. But they're there all the way from EYFS to year 6, and the idea there is keep up, not catch up. An intervention should be focusing on keeping those children up with the rest of the class. I used to use the analogy of a boat. Some children on the main boat, some children on the tug being dragged along, the jet skis are whizzing off on their own. We want everybody on the boat together. Don't want anybody feeling that they're having to be dragged along. The intervention there is to plug that gap, fill it, so they feel part of everybody else, builds their confidence, ready for the next step of their learning. And there's a freebie there, download if you'll have a look at for the next step of planning and intervention, Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, the link's there if you fancy having a little look. And one final thing, Twinkl have acquired Educate, which you may well have heard of. It's an EdTech organisation. They were focused on Key Stage 3 a lot, but now it's Key Stage 2. Lots of quizzes on there. You can set up quizzes, help, because quiz obviously is great for assessment tools as well. Children love to do it. Set for homework, a variety of different things. So if you fancy a little checkout, there's a 30-day free trial you can just have a little look at and see if it's for you. But as another way of hopefully helping our children, opportunities, different types of assessment, allowing them to keep up with the class and be confident in their maths and feel they really can succeed. So it does come to that final Key Stage 2 SATs paper. They know they're fully prepared. They've had lots of support, lots of low stakes assessment to hopefully help that final high stakes assessment.